it might be or something like.
So the case of the Mishnah on Amud Aleph was about the opposite of what we usually had. The case was that a man's wife went overseas, and he heard that she died, and based on that information, he married her sister. It's also to marry a wife's sister, but it's only b'chaya, only as long as she's alive. And after she died, it's mutter to marry her sister, and he heard that his wife died. He married her sister, and then she came back. The wife came back. It wasn't true. So the Mishnah says that he's still mutter to remain with his wife. Unlike before, we had a case where the woman heard that her husband died and she got married. Then she's over there, she can't go back to her husband. But over here, he could go back to his wife, even though he had married her sister. And the Gemara asked 3 lines from the bottom, that she should become Aser. The fact that he had relations with her sister should Aser her. Means a man married a wife, has a wife, and he had relations with her sister, which is also Chayiv Koros. And the Gemara thinks that she become Aser to him. He shouldn't, not his wife should become Aser to him. He shouldn't be allowed to be with his wife anymore because he had relations with her sister. The Gemara doesn't tell us why the Gemara thinks that it should be Aser. We'll see the Sugya today. That's going to be the subject, and it's going to come out that there is no Isser Daraisa to remain with one's wife after he had relations with her sister. But the Gemara thinks that it should be. The wife becomes because the husband had relations with her sister. Just like in the Mishnah, when a wife's husband went overseas and she heard that he died, she can't go back to him. So here also, she shouldn't be allowed to go back. He shouldn't be allowed to take back his wife after he had relations with her sister. The Gemara is not proving from there that a Sasser, the whole Isser doesn't say over there that there is any such Isser. But the Gemara just means, as far as the Mazin and Shogig, the fact that we consider it, if there is such an Isser, the Gemara is assuming there is such an Isser. So the fact that it was a mistake and they had the testimony reason to think that she died, but that shouldn't be a heter. The same way in the Mishnah, when it comes out, it's verified now, confirmed that the husband is alive. So then, even though they had good reason and it's only a shogeg, but still, it's also to go back to her husband. So too, it should be also to go back to his wife after he had relations with his sister.
It doesn't make a difference.
Shteidim is mutter, even by a wife, because then it wasn't a fault at all. But here it is like it is. By one aid it is. But the Gemara is asking that the same thing should be by a sister, by a wife's sister. And the Gemara is going to say that there is no such issa. There's no such issa in the first place of a wife becoming usher because he had relations with her sister. Lo dummy, ishto, lo dummy. It's not the same. Ishto the amazing asira the raisa b'shoki gaza b'rabbanan. If the wife would have been mizana intentionally, she knows that her husband is alive and everything, and she has relations out of marriage. So then she's also to her husband with the raisa, like a sota. Sota is only a suffix, but if you know for sure that she was mizana, she's also to her husband. So b'shoki gaza b'rabbanan. So even the Mishnah where she thought that he's dead, also they made a gzera. That's our Mishnah. But achos, top of tzadihei, achos isha, the b'mezid lo asim v'deraisa. The shogig goes b'rabbanan. That even if she would have done it b'mezid, even if he would have done it b'mezid, that a man had relations with his sister-in-law intentionally, the wife doesn't become asa.
Wow,
his wife doesn't become asa.
That's the way it is.
That's what it is. That's the way it is.
It's a story like that in Lakewood.
The what?
The guy had a relation with his wife's
sister. So that's a chiv. That's chiv chorus. That's chiv chorus. But it doesn't make his wife Muslim. He still allows to stay with his wife. So here, the way the Gemara sounds, sounds like it is asa mirabanan, midaraisa, b'mezid. I'm sorry, I said wrong. Midaraisa is not asa at all. It's asa mirabanan. Here the Gemara says if it would have been b'mezid, it's not asa midaraisa. So b'shogeg is asa mirabanan. But the words are mashma that, but it would have been b'mezid. It would have been asa midrabanan. But you said a second ago not. He said in Lakewood something happened, and even though it was b'mezid, So that's what the postscript seem to say. It's not even b'mezid. I didn't see. I looked around in the Shulchan Aruch. It didn't say that it's asa. But the Gemara does sound there that it would have been asa mirabanan. Just b'shogeg was a mirabanan. I didn't look further into it, but it seems to say in the Gemara that mirabanan it would be asa if he did it b'mezid. But here that's b'shogeg because of b'rabbanan. But in the postscript it sounds like it's even asa if it's mutter, if it's even if it's b'mezid, and I didn't go further. And he said the Gemara is mutter. That's what it seems to say in Shulchan Aruch, and I don't know why. It seems to be against the Gemara. Okay, now the Gemara goes into the sugya how come it's not usher? How come a person's wife is not usher on him when he had relations with her sister? Why? I know she's not usher. Now we don't know the other reason. Who says it is usher? Why should you think it is usher? So we'll get to that. The time you look at the brisa, osa. It says in the pasuk osa. Rashi tells us the pasuk for shachav ish osa. Here's that v'shachav ish osa shech bazera. That's by a parsha of a sota. So it says that if a man had relations with her, so she's not allowed to stay with her husband. But since it says had relations with her, that the person comes to minimize to only to exclude that only the woman's own znus is going to answer her on her husband, but the znus of her sister is not going to answer her on her husband. So even if the husband had relations with her sister, it doesn't make the wife usher. The wife still can stay with her husband. But the Bryce has to explain why would you think differently. It means we're wondering the whole time why where does it come from? Why should it be that it's usher? It doesn't say that it's usher. Why should it be usher? So the Bryce says to be a couple chomer. Shiyochal balo dinu u'ma b'mokum shabal isakal nesa ha'oser kama mokum shabal isachomor elo din shenesa ha'oser. That's why you need a person to say that it's mutter. You might have thought that there's a couple chomer. It's not clear what the couple chomer is. The Gemara is going to work on. It's going to be a couple of choices. But the words are that there's a kavah chomer. There's another place. There's another place which is more lenient than our case. And nesa ha'oser. Nesa ha'oser means the one who caused the isser becomes usher. So in a regular case let's talk about a regular case. Rashi tells us right away the maskana of the Gemara, even though the Gemara is going to take time to get there. But we'll do Rashi where Rashi was to read the Gemara. So Rashi goes to the maskana, what the Gemara is going to say at the end of the page. That Eishesish, we know that Eishesish is also to her husband if she was Mazana. And that's called, for some reason, it's called the Isser Kal. It's called the Isser Kal. That's Eishesish and Chayiv Chenek, it's not Mishmis's Bezdin. That's going to be the difficulty. It's not called such, that's called such Isser Kal. But let's take that aside. That is called, for some reason, it's a light Isser. And even over there, by a light Isser of Eishesish, she becomes Isser to her husband. And the Gemara calls that Nesar HaOser. The Oser, the one who causes the Isser, becomes Isser. Who's the one who causes the Isser? Why is a married woman not allowed to marry? Because of her husband. Her husband is called the Oser. The fact that he's a husband that allowed that prohibits her to have relations with anybody else. And now he becomes Oser. The husband becomes Oser. She becomes Oser. The husband becomes Oser to her. She can't have relations with the husband. The Oser, the husband, becomes Oser to the woman. So too, the case of Echesach, Achos Ishto, the wife's sister, which is called the Issa Chomer for some reason. We don't know how to say that Eishesish is much more Chomer. Eishesish is Chayiv Mises Bezin, capital punishment. And Achos Isha is Chayiv Koros, is not as similar. But we'll take it now without understanding how come a wife's sister is called more Chomer than Eishesish. And if you see by Eishesish that the Oser becomes Oser, so too here the Oser is going to become Oser. Who's the Oser? Who's the Oser by the Isser to marry your wife's sister? Rashi says that the wife is the one who's the Oser. The wife, because it's her sister. When someone marries a woman, so she Osers her sister to have relations with her husband. So she also should become Oser. That's what the Brisa is suggesting, that there's a Kal V'chomer that should say that a wife's sister should also Oser the wife to have relations with her husband. And that's why it's a kasha. That's why there's a Havamina to say that the wife should be Oser on her husband from now on. And if we need a person to say Osa, v'shachav vish Osa, that only a woman's own nus answers, but the sister's nus is not going to answer her on her husband. Adkan, a little vague. The Gemara is going to continue. Before the Gemara continues, the Brisa continues. Is that true that a wife's sister doesn't make the wife Osa on her husband? Again, a man was mazana with a sister-in-law, doesn't make the wife Osa. Rabbi really says the huge chiddush that if a person had relations with his mother-in-law, I mean that's also a chayiv sreifa. It's even more than chorus. It's chayiv sreifa. It's capital punishment. But he says that if after a person married, he's not allowed to have relations with the mother-in-law. And here it says that if he did have relations with the mother-in-law, he becomes usher on his wife. It's a huge chiddush. And he says everybody agrees. Rabbi Yehuda says that Beishami still both agree that if a person had a relation with his mother-in-law, he's not allowed to be with his wife anymore. What do they argue about? If he had relations with his sister-in-law, which we just said against that. We just said that it doesn't. Osa. The Gemara is going to talk about where he gets it from. But Beis Shammai says that if he had relations with his sister-in-law, also he can't stay with his wife anymore. But that story you just said, according to Beis Shammai, there wouldn't be allowed to go back to his wife. Basil says that not a sister-in-law does not ask her, the wife, to be with her husband, but the mother-in-law would ask her. But Beis Shammai says that even a sister-in-law also would ask her, the wife, to be with her husband anymore. That was Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi argues, Rabbi Yossi, we're going to pass like Rabbi Yossi, that is more lenient. Even that even Beis Shammai agrees that a sister-in-law doesn't make it the wife puzzle. That the machlokes is by a mother-in-law, and even Beis is even that's mutter. And that's how we paskin, that both the sister-in-law and the mother-in-law, even though it's terrible, if he had relations with a sister-in-law, it's chayv koros. If he had relations with his mother-in-law, it's chayv sreifa. But it doesn't make his wife usher to him. So that's maybe in parentheses. Meanwhile, so the Gemara starts talking. The Brisa continues. It's all a big Brisa, it seems, and the Brisa is going to continue and talk about how do we know that it's mutter. So we said already that was the pasuk. We said Osa. The Osa is the pasuk to say that's mutter. But the Brisa, for some reason, I'm not sure. It first goes to say a drasha why we should know that it's mutter, and the Gemara is going to end off. The Brisa is going to say that all that is only going to be enough reason to say that it's shogeg. Is that deal is shogeg? How do you know amazing? So it's very strange. I don't get it. But the Gemara is going to first make it. The Brisa is going to make a drasha to say that even by Eishes Ish, who was mizana, if it was b'shogeg, she could go back to her husband, right? An Eishes Ish, a married woman that was mizana b'shogeg, she could go back to her husband. Only b'mezid she cannot. That's what.
As long as the
husband. The Kohen is even boneless. But if it was b'shogeg, like our Mishnah talks about that, she had eidim that it was b'shogeg, even eid echad. So no, eid echad is worse because we want to make sure we want to make consequences. But otherwise, the fact that it's a shogeg, it is mutter to go back to her husband, and only a mezid is lasa. So here, the way the Brisa is set up, it looks like first the Gemara is going to learn out that for sure we're not going to ask her, the woman, the wife. If the husband was mizana with his sister-in-law, surely the wife doesn't become much if it's b'shogeg, because even a Eishes Ish who was mizana b'shogeg also doesn't become much to her husband. But how do you know mezid? And then we go back to the drasha of shogeg, to the drasha of osa. So it sounds very roundabout, like we don't usually do such a thing. We're going to say in a second that even mezid is mutter, and it's not like an Eishes Ish. And first we go step by step that even if theoretically there would be a nisser on a wife, if the husband was mizana with her sister, if there would be a nisser, but b'shogeg, surely it's mutter. But how do you know b'mezid? That's also mutter. So you can really leave all this out in between. We're coming to say that even b'mezid is no issa. So I'm not sure why the Gemara goes, why the Brisa goes so roundabout. But the way, let's start the way the Brisa goes. Lefi shebetchila hu muter b'chol hanashim sheba'olam, v'hi muteres b'chol hanashim sheba'olam. Before a couple got married, a single man, single woman, he's muter to marry anybody. She's muter to marry anybody, right? So that's the situation before they got married. And then kitcha, and then when a man consecrates a woman, he consecrates, is that the right word? He marries the woman, kiddushin. So who osra? He osra too. He prohibits her on other men, and she prohibits him on other women. Now, why is that? That she prohibits him more than he prohibits her. Why? Because when a woman gets married, that marriage asks her on any man. She's not allowed to marry anybody. But that marriage only causes that he's asked to marry her relatives. But he's not asked to marry anybody else. He's allowed to marry more women. But he's not allowed to marry her relatives, her mother, her sister, her daughter. Follow dinu. If that's true, if we have this, we're just setting up, all this was just to set up, that when a marriage happens, he asks her more than she asks him. And now, follow dinu. This should be a kal v'chomer. Umahu she'asra b'chol anashim sheba'olam. Shagiga ba'asula eno neseres b'mutala. He shalo asato elu b'krov aseh shagag be'iser ba'asulo eno din shalo nesar b'mutar lo. So, and the more ends off, the Brisa ends off is that in the shogeg. If you know something is going to be mutter when a woman is going to do znus, kal v'chomer, if the man is going to do the issa. Once we set up the kal v'chomer, who's kal what's chomer? So how does it go over here? That Dinhu, he who asks her and all men in the world, if she was only b'shogeg, means she had relations with somebody b'shogeg, eino neseres, b'mutala. She doesn't become usher to the one she's mutter to. Who's she mutter to? Her husband. She's mutter to her husband, usher to all men in the world. And she had relations by mistake with one of those men in the world. So she doesn't become usher to her husband. That's the thing, that even Isha Insaf was b'shogeg, she could go back to her husband. So he, Shalom Asato El B'Kov Aseh, when she answers him in her relatives, which is much less than he answered her and all the women in the world. She answered only the relatives. So surely, Shogeg, if you have relations with Shogeg, surely it's not going to answer her. Shagag Ba'asalo, Inadin Shalonesa B'Mutter Lo. That if it was only B'Shogeg, it's surely not going to answer in what was mutter till now. Till now, he's mutter with his wife. The wife's not going to become usher because he had relations with his sister. But that's only good for Shogeg. Zadin L'Shogeg. That's good enough to say Shogeg, that even Eishasish, that was Mizana, the Shogeg is mutter to her husband. So surely if a man was Mizana with a sister-in-law, it's not going to make her, the Shogeg, it's not going to make him usher in that woman. But that's not enough. We want to know about Mazid. But Mazid Benayin, how do you know by Mazid? Back to what you said in the beginning, first base. Osa Shchivasa Asrata, Ven Shchivasa Osa Asrata. Okay, very good. So we got back to the Skan again. How do you know? We had reason to think, Kavachomer, that maybe the Mazid at least, when a man has relations with a sister-in-law, it should make him usher to be with his wife anymore. And the pasuk says Osa that it doesn't. This parentheses, the next parentheses, goes back to what the parentheses was before. I just marked it to be able to mark it out. That the Gemara Mechokas before, the Bryce had a Mechokas at Yudah Yosi, if there's somebody that holds that a mother-in-law is worse. It could be a mother-in-law is worse than a sister-in-law. It comes out according to Yosi that according to Beisil, even a mother-in-law also doesn't make, the relation with the mother-in-law doesn't not make the wife usher on the husband. But Yudah said yes, that even according to Beisil, he agrees that mother-in-law is worse, and it's going to matter. So that's what the Gemara wants to know. Why should a mother-in-law be worse than a sister-in-law? So that's going to be the drasha. It means it's not real. It's not going to be negel halacha because we pass like Yosi according to Beisila, but according to Yehuda, according to Beisila, or according to Yosi, according to Beishamai, they hold that a mother-in-law is worse than a sister-in-law as far as this goes.
It's partially because if the wife dies, then he's mutter to the sister. But if the wife dies, he's not mutter to the mother-in-law.
Right, but here we're talking about that they were alive.
I'm just saying, but we see that the mother-in-law
is more severe. But if there's no such drasha, if you have the drasha that said before, Osa says that a woman's nus answers, but the woman's somebody else's nus doesn't answer. So that drasha should have covered the mother-in-law also. If you take that drasha, that the only time a woman becomes usher to her husband is only because her own nus, right. But somebody else's nus doesn't make her usher. So then that should have covered the mother-in-law also. Her mother was mizana with her husband. Right. That shouldn't make her usher. That kasha still remains. You're saying a good svara that you find that it's worse, but that still doesn't explain that the pasuk says every case is mutter over here. So here's what the Gemara talks about. Amr Rabbi Ami, Amr Shlokish. My time with Rabbi Yehuda. What does Rabbi Yehuda get that a mother-in-law is worse? You can say Rabbi Yehuda according to Beis Hillel, or you could say Rabbi Yossi according to Beis Shammai. Tichsiv, we had this yesterday, and the pasuk is a difficult pasuk. It talks about when a person has relations with a wife and her mother. So it says that you burn him and them, and that's a kasha. That word is very hard. Yesterday we had the problem that you burn him, but how can you burn them? Means one of them, yes, the mother, but the first one, she's innocent. Like Rashi said, Aniyazu, what's the problem? You know, what's her? Well, she's innocent. She has such a husband. She has such a sister or a mother. Like, what is that? She has a mother that they mazana. What does that have to do with her? Why should she burn her? Yesterday we had two drushes, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva. Either it means the mother-in-law and her mother, that you have two Yisurim over there, or it means that it's only usher as long as the mother is alive. That was yesterday's drushes. Here's a new drusha. The whole family gets burned, which means also the daughter, also the mother. What did the daughter do? And man, the Sreifa, so if it's not referring to actually burning, the punishment of capital punishment, it means that she becomes usher. Like we say today also, like somebody got burnt, he got burnt, that maybe it's a similar expression, that it means that she's going to be affected. She became nifgam. Now what does it mean? That the wife, it's true that the mother, the husband had relations with the mother-in-law. So you're going to burn the husband and the mother. But the daughter also becomes usher. It means even if it would have been a case where they're not burning the husband or whatever, but she becomes usher to her husband. So that's a drasha to say that even though by other relations, if he had relations with the sister, it's not going to usher him on his wife. But if he had relations with the mother, then the pasuk has a drasha to say that he does become usher to his wife. I thought I made a beginning parentheses. I didn't say the end parentheses, but might as well do it now. It should end over here more or less. First white line. We don't know like Yehuda. If someone had relations with a mother-in-law, he becomes usher on his wife. We don't pass like him. We pass that even if he had relations with a mother-in-law, even though it's chayv sreifa, it's terrible, but he doesn't become usher on his wife. There was a person who had relations with his mother-in-law. Chayv sreifa. But there was not no bezin over there. It was not Samjef Sanhedrin. Asher Rav Yehuda Nagde. Rav Yehuda brought him and he gave him malchus. That's as much as they could do. They gave malchus. Amalei, and he told him, Ilav Damar Shmuel Lein Lachak Rav Yehuda Asmita Allah Isur Da'olam. If not, the way Shmuel says that the Allah is not like Rav Yehuda, I would have asked you forever. It means I would have asked you on your wife. That once he had relations with his mother-in-law, according to Rav Yehuda, he's also on his wife. But Shmuel said the lachzana kav. So he gave him malchus and he told him that you're lucky that you can go back to your wife because really that's nus that you did with your mother-in-law. According to Yehuda, would have asked you on your wife forever. But you don't pass like him. So that's the halacha. You pass like Rabbi Yossi, according to Beis Hillel, that even if somebody was mizana with his mother-in-law, the wife doesn't become muslim. But we still didn't finish the brisa. It means we said the brisa is very hard. The brisa before are called the Isser Kal and the Isser Chamor. Just to highlight that, when it said the Isser Kal, Isser Chamor, it said that there's some case where there's a Isser Kal, and then there's Isser Chamor. And I had made a couple Chomer before. It said if there's a case of Isser Kal that the wife, that the Nesar becomes Osir, not the wife, the Osir becomes Nesar. And over there, those are Nesar by regular marriage, that's the husband. The husband is one who's answering his wife on the rest of the world, and he becomes Asa to his wife. So it's a chomer, which is our case. Our case is the case of a sister-in-law. That's called Issa chomer for some reason. So surely the Osa should become Nesa, which means who's the Osa? The wife. The wife is the one who's making her sister Asa. So she should become Asa to her husband. That would be a kal chomer that we would have said if not for the pasuk that says Osa. Osa tells us that it's not. It's mutter. But we're going back into Havamina, and we don't know what's called this kal Issa chomer. The thing that right away would come, we would say Eishesish, but that doesn't make sense because that's called Issa kal. Means which is worse, Eishesish or a wife's sister? To marry Eishesish is chenek, capital punishment. To marry your wife's sister is chorus. It's not as bad as marrying an Eishesish. So what's kal pshat? Issa kal Issa chomer. So the Gemara is going to try. The Gemara is going to try a few choices. People are going to come at the end that it does mean Eishesish, and we have to figure out why it's called Issa kal. So the Gemara starts. My Issa kal. What does that mean? What is this account? What is this account we're talking about? We're learning out from there that the husband does become Muslim. So the Gemara is going to try a few tries. I didn't have time to highlight it before. Let's do it as we go along. The Gemara is going to try. The Gemara is going to try Masik Gushasa. Then the Gemara is going to try Yevama. Then the Gemara is going to try Sota. And then something else on Amr Bey is coming up also. So if just the first try to say that this is called Masik Gushasa. What's the case? Masik Gushasa Mishnah says. Wait, that also Mishnah says. Masik Gushasa Mishnah says. If somebody takes back his divorcee after she got married, if someone divorced his wife, she married somebody else, and then he takes her back again. And that's the Isalav. Lo, how does it go over there? Lo yichal ba lo rishon ashesh lachol to take her back. Ba le'ahai asra le'dahai. That when the husband, call the husband number one, husband number two. Right? She was first married to one husband. She got divorced. And then she married somebody else. And then he divorced her or died. And then she's asked to go back to the first husband. Husband number one, husband number two. So when husband number two had relations with her, she's not allowed to go back anymore to husband number one. Right? That's the Pashat Halacha, Masik Gushasa. How about Ba'ala Idach Asra Ladahai? What if the first husband would take her back? He wasn't allowed to. So now she's not allowed to go back to the second husband either. Why is that? So I would have said the reason is because it's also the same even Masik Gushasa. It happened the second time that the second husband is not allowed to take her because he divorced her. It happened twice. The first husband divorced her, second husband took her. Second husband divorced her, the first husband took her. And now that's a chayv lavin, but the kedushin is still faced. That's the reason why the second husband is not allowed to take it back anymore. But the Gemara doesn't look at it like that. The Gemara doesn't look at it like it happened the same thing twice. The Gemara looks at it that there's an issa that happened. It's called issa kal. Masik Gushasa says issa kal, like yachasit, everything else. And it happens that if they did the issa nesa osa, that the husband who is the cause of the Isser, he's not allowed to marry anymore. So the second husband becomes Isser to marry her because she did the Isser. If she did the Isser of marrying back the first husband, she becomes Asa on the second husband. Is that good? The regular Masuk Grishasa means that she becomes Asa to the first husband.
Right.
And now it happened if they did the Isser and he took her back, so that Isser causes that the Osir is Nesa. Who's the Osir? The second husband. And he's also Asa to take her back. And the Gemara thinks from there you should be able to learn out a Kal V'chomer to Choso, the Chosishto, that if a person has relations with his sister-in-law, the wife should become usher to her husband. But the Gemara says that wouldn't be a good drasha. They take out the word Yisua Barog. The Rashi takes it out because it doesn't seem to be true. Let's just mark that out. Yisua Barog, they take out these words. So Shekenit Maguf, Yisua Isra Olam. So the Gemara says that in the Kal V'chomer world, there are two, even though in general you would be right that Masik Grishasa is not as bad as a wife's sister, a Chosishto, but in some ways, Masik Grishasa is worse. Why? Shekenit Maguf. That when she marries somebody else, that's called something happened to her. Something happened to her. She was married to Isser. The case of the Chosishto, nothing. The woman, the wife, nothing happened to the wife. The wife, she's standing on the side. And her husband had relations with her sister-in-law. It's not nitmaguf. Here it's worse that the woman herself became defiled. And also, Yisur Isser Olam, that the Isser of Masik Grishasa, there's no way to get it off. The Isser of Achosishto is only temporary, not temporary. It's defined, and it's finite, because if the wife dies, then it is mutter to take the wife's sister. Only in her lifetime it's usher. So you find two chumras that a Masik Grishasa has more than a Achosishto, so it wouldn't be enough reason to make a Kal V'chomer. So even though we tried, it didn't work. In this case, of Issachar, to suggest that the Issachar would be Masik Grishasa that becomes Aser, that the wife becomes Aser, wouldn't be enough reason to learn out to Achosishto. So that's not a good shot. Shot number 2, Elam Rashlokish Yevama. That you find that Yevama, if they had relations with Isser, there is a Isser to go back, the Oser is Nesa. So Kal V'chomer to Achosishto. But the Gemara wants to figure out what does it mean. What's the case of Yevama? That Yevama L'shuk. Yevama L'shuk said she was Chayiv Yibam and she went married out. And then she becomes Aser to the Yavam. That would be her Oser Nesa. We had this machlokes before. Rav Nuna, Rav Nuna holds that the Shemeres Yavam, that she's on deck for Yibam. If she married out, she can't go back to Yavam anymore. We said we don't pass like that, but at least Rav Nuna holds like that. So let's say, learn out from there. There's a kal that just like by this Issa, which is not so chomer, it's going to be a losa say, but the Achosishto is going to be Chayiv Kares, it's much more chomer. See if over here, the Osa Nesa, Kal V'chomer by Achosishto also Osa Nesa. But also the Gemara says again, it's not enough of a raya. That here it's worse because nitma guf, that the issa happened to the woman. She's the one who had relations out of the yibum, so she should become asa. But here the case of Achosishto, the wife didn't do anything. And also Yisua Barov means that it applies to the whole world. It means that she's not allowed to marry anybody. The issa of Achosishto is only to this particular case, not that everybody becomes asa. But this is a big issa, the fact that Ivam L'shuk is asa to everybody. So the Gemara considers that a more chomer. So that's not a good shot. So we try another shot. What does Yevama mean? Yevama L'achin. That is a case where Yevama is not allowed to marry other brothers also. What is that? And the Gemara talks about Maimra. We had many Gemaras that if there's one brother did Maimra, she's not allowed to marry other brothers. We had Chalitza, all the different things that cause that a woman, even though she's chayiv even to the brothers, once one brother did something, she can't marry the other brothers either. And that's going to be called Avad B'Maimra Hai Asra Le the Hai. Well, one brother did Maimer, that caused that she's not allowed to have, she can't even to the other brothers. And if after one did Maimer, the other one did have relations with another brother, had Yibum, that caused that she can't go back to the first one either. That'll be a case of Osir Anessa, that if you transgress the Isser, so then you become Asa. So the Gemara says no, then Ma'iri Shabal Sheni, Afilu Abba Banami Maimer. That it's not a didn't be because they had a relationship, that's why it's us. It would have been even if there would have been a mimer also, for that second one did. One brother did mimer, then another did mimer. No one's allowed to have relations with her anymore. So it's nothing to do with the yibum. That would have been a difficulty. There are those that hold that there is no mimer after mimer, that if the first one did mimer, the second mimer doesn't answer the first one on her. But the Maskash would be Ella, my area. That if one brother first did mimer, then the other brother did a get, or the first one brother did Mayim, the second one did Chalitza, it asks her to go back to the first one. So it has nothing to do with the Bia. The Bia is not inside the Bia. The Bia is inside other kinds of Yisurim, like a Get and a Chalitza, that also would have asked the woman to the first husband again. So it's not to the first Yavam. So it's nothing to do with this subject of having relations in a way that it asks her Osa and Esa. Elam Rav Yochanan Sota. Again, what are we looking for? We're looking for Isser Kal. Everything's looking for Isser Kal. What is that case that we know that if a woman is Mazana or somebody was Mazana, it causes that the Osa is Nesa. So, and we're interested in knowing about Achos Ishto if the wife becomes Asa to her husband after he's Mazana with his sister-in-law. That's the subject we're talking about. And we're looking for the Kavach Homer that would have said that as Asa. And the more tries Sota. Which Sota? Sota Lamam. What kind of Sota? Ilem Labal. Then maybe the point is that the husband becomes Asa to his wife. Baal Le'abal, Asra Le de Boel. That if, what's Allah over here? That there was a man, had a wife, and he suspected her to be with somebody. He told her, I'll test and don't be in seclusion with somebody. And she did. So now she becomes Asa to the husband until she drinks the Mayim Amor, until she drinks the Sota water. So then she's not allowed to be with her husband. And what if he did? The husband had relations with his wife after she became a Sota. They didn't go to the Beis HaMikdash yet. She didn't drink the water. The water would have proven if she's innocent or not. But she didn't. The husband's not allowed to have relations. But what if he did? She's not allowed to have relations with the bowl anymore. With the one that they say suspect him. So that'll be a case that Oser and Nessa, that the Oser is Nessa. The bowl is the one who is making the whole problem. And now, if they have relations, the husband had relations with his wife. Now she's not allowed to have relations anymore with the bowl either, if the husband would have died. But Ma'ir Yabola, Filu Nasan Lageta, Filu Amar Enani Mashka. That the Gemara says, no, it's not true. It's not the point about the Bia that Aser. The point is that she's Aser to the husband. She's Aser to the boil until she drinks. And if she doesn't drink, if like the husband gave her a get, or the husband said, I don't want to give her to drink, so he just wants to divorce her. So she can't go back to the boil. So the boil doesn't become Aser because it doesn't have relations. The boil can't have relations, can marry her because she didn't drink the Mayim Amorim.
But once she has a relationship with the husband, when she's not supposed to, then she can't treat the woman.
That's also true.
Right.
But that's going to be a technicality that she can't drink the water, and the fact that she's asked to the boil.
Right.
It's not because that the Bia asked her.
Right.
Ella Sota LeBoel. Sota LeBoel. That the fact that what will be here, that Sota, that Boel had relationships with. Does Rashi say anything on that? Sota, the bottom Rashi, Sota Shenivala LeBoel Nesa Baila Ha'osro Love. This is a regular case of Nus, it sounds like, that a Sota Shenivala LeBoel, that the Boels, the person who's Mazana with her, makes that the husband is not a Nesa Baila Ha'osro Love, that the husband is not allowed to have relations with the wife after she had Nus with. So, hi, Issa Kal, who Issa Chomer, who died in Eish Shish, that's a regular Eish Shish. And that's really what we started with, that L'chora, if you say the regular case of Eish Shish, there's Insa, that she's Asa to her husband, that's the case of Nessa Osa, so why is it called Issa Kal? That's really the simple shot in the words we started with in the beginning. And the whole difficulty was that is it called the Eish Shish? Is that called the Issa Kal? So that's what the Gemara got to. The Gemara tried a few choices, Masik Rishaso, Yevama to Lashuk, Yevama to the brothers. Then the Gemara started also with the Sota, also didn't work. So the only thing we have is Eish Shish. So Eish Shish is called the Issa Kal. And that's going to be a Kavach Homer to learn out that a Chosishta also would become Asa. His wife would become Asa when he had relations with his sister-in-law. Ella, an Amud Beis, Ella Marava, Eishes Ish. Which sounds like Enechanami, it's a regular Eishes Ish. A regular Eishes Ish is Insa. She becomes Asa to her husband. And the question was, why is it called Issa Kal? Or my call Issa Kal? She'ena Osra Kal Yama. So it's true that this is a little hard Gemara to me, but really it's true that, of course, Eishes Ish is more Chomer than a Chosishta. To Isser, to have a relationship with a married woman is a Chayiv Chenek, and it's much more than a Chosishta, which is Kares. But there is an aspect of Kal also. She'ena Osra Kal Yama. That the fact that a husband asks his wife to marry anybody is only as long as he's married to her. But if he divorce her or he would die, so it's not forever. But the Isser of a Chosishto, is more Chomer, a Kal Yamav at least. Of course, if she dies, it is mutter. But as long as she's alive, it's Asr. So that's more than a regular married woman in the fact that he could divorce her. He could divorce her in his lifetime. a husband, the Isser of Eishes has a certain aspect of Kula that a Chosishta doesn't have. That the Isser of Eishes could come off with a get, but the Isser of a Chosishta doesn't come off with a get. So that's enough reason to call it Isser Kal Isser Chomer, which is very difficult because even though it has one aspect of Chomer, but it has many other aspects of the other way, that Eishes is much more Chomer than a Chosishta. So I don't know. But the Gemara thought that would be the Kal V'chomer, and therefore we need the pasuk Osa to say that Osa Shchivasa Asrata, but the Shchiva of a sister doesn't answer. Tani Namayachi, Abuchon Nomer Mishum Abulazar, Eishes is the pshat in our Kal V'chomer. Umav B'Makom Abal Lisa Kal She'ein Osru Kal Yamov. Nesra Ha'osa, Abal Lisa Chomer She'osru Kal Yamov. And again, Shenesra Ha'osa. That's the Havamin of the Brisa. The fact that you find by Eishes that she becomes Asa. The husband becomes Asa to remain with her, and that's called Isser Kal because it's possible to get rid of the Isser by a get. Kal V'chomer to Achos Isha, that you can't get rid of the Isser even by a get. That we would think that the Osir is Nesar and the wife would become Asa to her husband after he had relations with his sister. Talmud Lomer Osa Shchivasa Osrata, then Shchivasa Chosa Osrata. So at this point, we're happy with that. That's the what we got so far. I mean, to make it short, the Gemara just brought the drasha that when a man has relations with a sister-in-law, a chiv kares, it doesn't make him usher on his wife. And why would you think so? It's difficult to think. It's difficult to figure out why you would think so. You have a big pilpul to figure out why would it be such a havmina that you should become usher. And the Gemara comes out that a week from Eishes Ish, that even though in general Eishes Ish is more homo, but there is an aspect of kal, and you might think that the same way that a wife who's mizana becomes asa to her husband, you would think that a man who had relations with his sister-in-law would asa the wife. Kamash Malan also. Aga, we had a machlokas also about a mother-in-law, and we passed like a verse according to Beis Hillel that even relations with the mother-in-law also does not asa the wife on him. That's the end of that sugya. Next sugya, the Mishnah says, so back to the Mishnah again. What happened again? Just to get the case, a man had relations with his sister-in-law, and because he thought his wife died, and then the wife came, she's alive. So it says he's allowed to take back his wife. Rabbi Yossi at the end of the Mishnah said strange words. You want to put on the air conditioner or whatever is good for everybody?
Thank you.
So thank you. So the Mishnah was good that someone had relations with a mother-in-law, with a sister-in-law. By mistake, he thought that his wife died. So when she comes back, he could stay with her, even though he did a chiv chorus, but he could take back his wife. We just had the Gemara that even amazing it wouldn't be awesome with the Raisa. The Brisa ended, the Mishnah ended off with the strange words we didn't know how to make out of it. That it said, "Culture post al de'achirim, post al de'yatzmo, post al de'achirim, and post al de'yatzmo." Which those words we didn't have any sense of it. And Rashi said, "Wait for the Gemara." Here we are. We came to the Gemara. What do these words mean? Just to point out that the Gemara in the beginning of the sugya point said another connection in the Mishnah. What if the sister-in-law also was married, and her husband also went overseas? Means that a man's wife and brother-in-law went overseas, and we heard that both of them died, and therefore he took his sister-in-law, which means in order to take the sister-in-law, two things had to happen. It had to be that his wife died, and also his brother-in-law died, and that's why he took his sister-in-law, and then both of them come back. So is he allowed to take back his wife? It says yes, because even though he had relations with his sister-in-law, it doesn't answer his wife. Is the sister-in-law allowed to go back to her husband? No, because she's Eishes, and that's what the Mishnah said. The Eishes, if there wasn't two Eidim, so then only was one Eid, so then she wouldn't be allowed to go back to her husband. And the Gemara in the beginning started that he's mutter to take back his wife, even though the sister-in-law is not allowed to go back to their brother-in-law. Like you might say that this union caused an Isser on the woman not to go back to her husband, and he's going to go back to his wife. Says yes. That's what the Mishnah says. That's what the Gemara explained in the Mishnah, that the heter to take back his wife is even if that union with the sister-in-law, that's nus, caused that the brother-in-law loses his wife. So the brother loses his wife and he doesn't lose his wife. Then Rabbi Yossi says that if he answers somebody else, then he answers himself. If he doesn't answer somebody else, he doesn't answer himself. What do those words mean? My come Rabbi Yossi, what did he mean to say? Even with the Kamatana Kama doesn't ishto, Begiso Lamdina Sayam, Ashes Giso Asira Vishto Sharia. The Kama Rabbi Yossi, Kiechid Ishto Sharia, Ashes Giso Nami Sharia. Maybe Rabbi Yossi means to say that he's speaking to the Tanakama. Tanakama said that it could be a case that the sister-in-law is going to be usher to her husband, and he's mutter to his wife. Well, put it. Let's say the same. The brother-in-law is usher. That again, there are two men married to two sisters, and the wife of one and his brother-in-law went away, and he took his sister-in-law, and then both of them come back. He's mutter to his wife. His brother-in-law is usher and his wife. And Rabbi Yossi says no. If he's mutter and his wife, then the brother-in-law is also mutter and his wife. That's how the Gemara suggests. Maybe that's what Rabbi Yossi means to say. That just Rabbi Yossi says that just like he's mutter to his wife, so also the wife of the brother-in-law is also mutter to the brother-in-law. But the Gemara says the words don't say that. Yachi kol she'ein post al de'achem mein post al de'atzmo. The opposite. Kol she'ein post al de'atzmo ein post al de'achem boile. It should. The way it says it is that if he doesn't passel others, if he doesn't affect others, then he's also mutter. That's not what you're saying. You're coming to say the opposite. That if he's mutter himself, if he's mutter in his wife, then he doesn't answer his brother-in-law is also mutter. So the words are opposite. If that's what Yossi meant to say, he didn't say it. He said the opposite. He says that if he doesn't passel others, he's not usher. And you want him to say, according to what you're explaining, if he's mutter himself, then his brother-in-law is also mutter. So the words don't say that pshat. Ve'ela, what are we going to say pshat in Rabbi Yossi? We could suggest that Yossi means to say that if he messed up his brother-in-law, and by that union, his brother-in-law is going to lose his wife, then he can't take his wife either. The Tanakhama said that even though the brother-in-law is messed up and he lost his wife because of this union, but he could take back his wife. The rest says no. If you cause that the brother-in-law cannot take back his wife, so you can't take back your wife either. But the more has a problem with that, because then Rabbi Yossi said two statements. He said, if you passel others, so then you also are usher. But if you don't passel others, then you are mutter. So the Gemara is asking that you explained only the words of the ratio of Rabbi Yossi's words, that if he passels others, then he also is passel. But what does he mean to say? If he doesn't passel others, then you are mutter. What does it mean to say in that half of the statement? So I'm just going to speak out the simple thing that I would have thought, simple present say it. I would have thought of simple pshat. That means if there is no brother-in-law, why not say a simple case? If there's no brother-in-law, she's not married. The sister-in-law was not married. That would have been a simple case. That if you didn't ask anybody, why? How did you ask anybody? Because nobody's there. There's no husband. So I could have thought that. I thought it was a nice pshat, but the Gemara doesn't say it. So the Gemara is trying to find pshat in a case where the brother-in-law is not going to become asa. Amrabami Aresha. That the case could be going on the Resha, and let's say it outside. The Gemara say a simple case. Where's the case where the brother-in-law doesn't become Masa? If there were two Eidim. What if two Eidim came and said that this brother-in-law died? The brother-in-law? Yeah. Two Eidim came and said the brother-in-law died. Then the wife, the sister, would be able to go back to her husband because she had two Eidim. That's what the Mishnah says. So that's what the Gemara is going to suggest. And maybe Rabbi Yossi means to say that if the sister was going to become Asa to her husband because only was an Eid Echad, so then you are also going to be Asa to your wife. But if the brother-in-law is not going to become Asa to his wife, that would be the case that there were two Eidim. If there were two Eidim that said that he died, then the wife would be able to go back to him. That's what the Gemara is going to say. It goes back on the Reish. This is Al Pi Bezdin Teitzei B'Tumen HaKorban. Al Pi Eidim Teitzei V'Chayvus B'Korban. I'm not sure why it brings on this part of the Mishnah. The should have brought a few words before that, where it says that she doesn't need to get, she can go back. But here the Gemara seems to say that the part of the Mishnah, that if she got married to Bezdin, which means Eid Echad, then she cannot stay with her husband, and she doesn't bring a korban because she relied on Bezdin. But if she had two Eidim, Teitzei V'Chayvus B'Korban, I'm not sure why the Gemara should have brought the different part of the Mishnah. I have to look around if someone says different girsa. They should have brought the part of the Mishnah that if there are two Eidim, she could go back to her husband. That's all the Gemara wants. The Kama Tanakama, Lo Shna Al Pi Eidim, the Eishes Giso Sharia, Lo Shna Al Pi Bezdin, the Eishes Giso Asira. The Tanakama says no difference. No difference if the brother-in-law is going to be Asa on his wife or not. This person who can take back his wife, the one who had relations with his sister-in-law, could take back his wife, regardless if that sister-in-law became also her husband or not. And that the Yossi says no. Come Rabbi Yossi, Al Pi Bezdin, the post al de'achirim, post al de'yatzmo. Al Pi Eidim, the post al de'achirim, and the post al de'yatzmo. That if the sister-in-law got married with one aid, in which case she's not allowed to go back to her husband. So then the husband, this one cannot take back his wife because he messed somebody else up. This union messed somebody else up. He can't take back. But in the case where there are two Eidim, that he doesn't mess up the brother-in-law, then he could take back his wife also. That's the first shot to explain Rabbi Yossi, and it passes. It's a good shot. The Gemara continues another shot, which here is a little bit more complicated. I'm not sure if I'm going to get through it now. If it's okay, I'd rather stop here.
Okay.
Even though we could go a couple of lines more. I surely would have liked to go to the Mishnah. I'm not going to get so far. I wasn't able to prepare that. But this next Gemara seems a little bit complicated also. So if it's okay, if we can stop here, it's third wide line, and we'll come back with Motzei Shabbos.
You say something on the parasha?
1 second. Let me just stop this a second.
I know. I'm sure you have
No,
something.
no.
I'm not